Okay, so I'm going to be doing my course presentation on early childhood education. So I'm going to start off with the history of early childhood education. So throughout the years, there have been many educators, philosophers, theorists, and teachers that have helped pave the way for early childhood education. Early childhood education wasn't always something that was on the top of everyone's mind. Starting with the Industrial Revolution, women were needed in the textile mills, and this added a greater need for child care in 1840. In result to this, the first infant schools started to pop up, and they were very popular. But infant schools didn't last long due to a doctor named Abram Graham, who said that early learning was causing illness and even insanity. Due to this one doctor's opinion, the support for infant schools started to disappear for decades. It wasn't till the turn of the century and the progressive reformers picked up the child care cause, as well as making the education of youth their top priority. Due to this, child care and kindergarten started to spread all over the U.S. In 1926, the National Association for the Education of Young Children was founded. In 1931, over 70 colleges started to offer early education as a major. Then World War II hit and forced men into war and women into the workforce, which opened up a new need for early child care. Due to this, Congress in 1940 established the Lanham Act of 1940, which was a federal-funded child care program. This made America a progressive society. As men came back from war, they pushed women back into the homes, and Congress expired the Lanham Act in 1946. Soon a post-war baby boom occurred, and the demand for child care rose again. In 1961, brain scientists Jay Hunt and Benjamin Bloom provided that intelligence is not genetic, but shaped by our early experiences. Due to this finding, President Johnson declared war on poverty and started the program known as Head Start, launching in 1965. Head Start was so popular that in 1971, Congress passed the Comprehensive Child Development Act, but in 1972, President Nixon vetoed the child care legislation because he felt it was too close to the Soviet Russia's communal child rearing programs and felt that child care was weakening the American family. Today, the education is run by the state, and all education is different depending on where you live. Next, I'm going to give y'all a little timeline of early childhood education. So we are going to start with 1912. The Children's Bureau was founded. The Children's Bureau was the first federal agency within the U.S. government to focus solely on improving the lives of children and families. The Bureau has tackled some of our nation's most pressing social issues, including infant and maternal death. Then in 1926, the National Association for the Education of Young Children was established. This association was established to improve the well-being of all young children and focusing on the quality of education and development of services offered to children from birth to age 8. The Lanham Act was then passed in 1940. The Lanham Act was created to provide funding for the child care during World War II. These centers were mainly for mothers that were working in war-related industries. This act was very much needed due to the lack of care centers there was during this time. Mothers that had to go and take over the jobs that the men left behind needed a place for their children to go and be safe, thus forming these child care centers under this act. Then in 1965, Elementary Secondary Education Act was passed. This act was passed as part of the War on Poverty and to emphasize equal access to education and establish a higher standard. of education. The law invested federal funded education programs to be run by the states. Then also in 1965, Head Start was founded. Head Start was founded to ready low-income children over the summer months for the upcoming kindergarten year. Over the years, it has become a respected preschool age program founded in many communities working with children from all backgrounds and abilities. Next we have in 1974 the Education Amendments of 1974. These amendments were created to ensure appropriate education opportunities for children with special needs. Congress passed these amendments, which guaranteed due process and provision for education in the least restricted environments. Then in 1975, the Public Law 94-142 was passed. Congress passed this public law, which is also called the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, mandating a free and appropriate education for all children with disabilities and extending many rights to the parents of such children. Then in 2001, the No Child Left Behind Act was passed. No Child Left Behind is a U.S. act of Congress that reauthorized the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Included Title I provisions applying to disadvantaged students. This act increased the awareness for all children in school and to make sure that all children are getting the same chance in school and education. Then, in 2003, the Children Learning Institute was designed. Texas Governor Rick Perry designed the Children's Learning Institute as the Texas State Center for Early Childhood Development to encourage the expansion of our programs as well as to focus on development and ostracizing the implementations of best practices in education on a statewide base. Lastly, in 2013, the Preschool for All Initiative. The Preschool for All Initiative was passed by President Obama. It created high-quality preschool nationwide and promoted access to education for children under the age of 4. Next, I have the influential people. These are people that had a big toll on the early childhood education system. First, we have Marie Montessori. Marie Montessori was a strong believer in the concept that children are the product of their environment and the adults around them. She believed that these factors determine the children's learning methods. Montessori had a concept called beauty and order that is still seen in education today. Beauty and order is giving the children responsibility, organization, and simple consent rules. Montessori believed in giving all children the opportunity to learn and develop in their own way. Montessori believed in never calling kids normal. Their learning is to be called typically developing. For children to get the most out of their learning, they don't really need many rules. Kids learn best by being around others and interacting. Lastly, Montessori didn't believe in unteachable children. She believed in every child had untapped potential, and teachers like herself could help reach and discover this potential. Next, we have Jean Piaget. Piaget established a learning theory where children's development is broken down into a series of stages. These stages are still used by early childhood educators to see how their kids are developing. The stages are sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. Along with these stages, Piaget's theory that children learn the best through direct interaction with the environment meaning classrooms, teachers, and the world around them. Piaget instilled the concept in today's teaching that the best way for children to learn is by doing things themselves and developing their own understanding of their learning. Next, we have Leigh Vygotsky. Vygotsky introduced a very important developmental learning theory called scaffolding. Scaffolding is when kids are building on what they have already learned. The classmates and teachers are to help the scaffolding learning style. Vygotsky also emphasized on collaboration and the importance of a mixed age grouping of children to help support knowledge and skills that are required by the children. So next we have John Dewey. Dewey believed that children should learn by their interest. In Dewey's perspective, the teachers are there to promote their interest for discovery and learning. He saw that the classroom is a place to promote social interaction and learning. Dewey has implemented the importance of the environment that the kids are learning in every day. This concept of having a difference in learning environments in home life is still seen today in the way that schools are run. Along with Montessori, Dewey believes that children learn better on their own. Lastly, Dewey believes that we learn by life situations and experiences and should be teaching that way. Next, we have Erik Erikson. Erikson, just like Piaget, had a stage method. His stages are called Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. Successful resolution of each stage affects the next stage. Going through each stage helps people form personality strengths or weaknesses based on the development during the different stages. Trust versus mistrust is also a huge concept that Erikson believes in. Children that have trouble with trust have a harder time down the road with developing empathy. These theories by Erikson are important to early childhood educators because they need to know the development stages to provide the children with the best education they can. Lastly, we have Friedrich Froebel. Friedrich Froebel's philosophy is that children achieve harmony by playing, which is a natural mode of learning. Froebel believed that play is the highest expression of development in humans. One of Froebel's approaches to education is called self-activity. Self-activity is where the child are led to learn by their own interest and to have free expression. Along with his theories and philosophy, he was also the one who created the concept of kindergarten. He based his education systems on gifts. The gifts were to develop basic understanding of the universe. You can see there is a theory throughout most of these philosophers of letting the education be led by what the children are interested in. I just found that very interesting and picked up on that, and that we still see that somewhat in today's learning, especially in younger kids in child care centers and early education centers. A lot of the teaching is based on what the kids are interested in. So next, I'm going to list a few of the education and trainings you have to be an early childhood educator. So in most states, a state certification is required. This certification is earned through getting your traditional bachelor's degree with a major in early childhood education. So along with a state certification, like I said, you need a bachelor's degree majoring in early childhood education. You have to complete a teacher preparation program that is approved by your state's Board of Education. You also have to complete a student teaching practicum in a early childhood program. And then lastly, you have to apply to your state's Board of Education for a teaching license/certification. So all of these requirements are very important for anyone that wants to become an early childhood educator or work in really any school or education setting. So lastly, I'm going to talk about the future of early childhood education. So early childhood is an ever-growing program that is always looking for a way to improve the cognitive and social development of children. The ECE teachers and programs are constantly developing new and better ways to give every child the same chance to learn and develop. The ECE is trying to help prevent factors of the future onset of adult disease and disabilities. So this program is always changing, always finding new ways to improve the education of our young children. And so that is it for my presentation, and these are all my sources I